The medical chart slipped from Dr. Maya Chun's tired hands as another round of congratulations echoed from the hospital conference room. She adjusted her simple blue scrubs and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, trying to focus on her patient. Notes instead of the celebration for the surgical team's latest breakthrough. At 36, she'd mastered the art of invisibility at Westlake Memorial Hospital. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Back up on call again, she heard someone whisper as she passed. A group of residents. The nickname had stuck for 4 years now. Ever since she'd started appearing silently to assist in complicated cases and vanishing before anyone could properly acknowledge her contributions. They thought it was harmless. They had no idea how right they were. Her official title was Emergency Medicine Specialist with a focus on trauma response, disaster medicine, and crisis management, skills that kept her essential, but often overlooked in the daily hospital hierarchy. She preferred it that way. Guilt was easier to carry in silence. The morning routine never changed. Arrive at 5 a.m. sharp, check the overnight admission logs, and begin her rounds. The emergency department was her sanctuary, filled with the familiar beeping of monitors and the antiseptic smell of hospital-grade cleaners. Here among the crash carts and trauma bays, she could almost forget who she used to be. Almost. Doctor Ethan Reynolds strode into the emergency department with his usual entourage of eager residents. Their white coats pristine and their confidence inflated from another successful surgical demonstration. At 34, Reynolds was everything the hospital administration wanted in a rising star: charismatic, photogenic, and completely unaware of his own limitations. "Hey, back up," Reynolds called out, his voice carrying across the nurses' station. "Planning to lead surgeries from theory books? Maybe you should stick to stitching cuts and leave the real medicine to those of us with steady hands." His followers laughed on cue. Dr. Sophia Wilson, barely 6 months out of residency, added, "Yeah, we need someone who can actually handle pressure in the OR, not just read about it in journals." Maya looked up from the patient chart she was updating, her dark hair pulled back in its usual practical bun. She could see the casual dismissal in their eyes, the easy superiority that came from never having faced true catastrophe. She'd seen that same look in her own mirror once, years ago, when she thought she was invincible. "Just doing my job, Doctor Reynolds," she said quietly, her voice barely carrying over the department's ambient noise. Reynolds stepped closer, his confidence radiating like heat. "Your job is to support our surgical teams, not to pretend you understand what we do in there. There's a difference between reading medical journals and actually saving lives when every second counts." The other doctors nodded in agreement. They'd all heard the rumors about Maya, how she'd transferred from some disaster zone overseas, how she'd chosen emergency medicine over surgery despite having the hands for it, how she seemed to withdraw whenever major trauma cases arrived. In their minds, Maya was just another burnout who couldn't handle the pressure of high stakes. Medicine, Maya's hands stilled on the chart. For a moment, she considered telling them about the time she'd performed an emergency cricothyroidotomy with a pocket knife and ballpoint pen while sheltering from artillery fire. She thought about describing the sensation of delivering twins by flashlight during a power outage in a flooded hospital, or the split-second decisions required to triage 50 injured people with supplies for only 10. Instead, she smiled softly, closed her patient chart, and walked away. No reaction, no argument, just the quiet dignity of someone who had nothing to prove to anyone. But as she rounded the corner toward the medication room, her fingers unconsciously traced the small scar on her left wrist, a reminder of the day her makeshift field hospital had been hit by mortar fire, and she'd still managed to evacuate every single patient. The young doctors didn't notice hospital director Dr. Rebecca Santos watching from her office doorway. At 62, Santos had seen everything the medical world had to offer. And something about the way Maya carried herself had always intrigued her. Not intrigued in a suspicious way, intrigued like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit where everyone assumed it belonged. She'd been watching Maya for months, noting the way she moved through emergency situations with the unconscious familiarity of someone who'd spent serious time in war zones. Ordinary doctors learned to respect crisis situations, but they didn't display that particular hyper-awareness, didn't check supply caches with the intensity of someone who'd learned that running out meant people died. "You know," Santos said quietly to her assistant, nurse manager Tomas Rivera, "that woman knows more about crisis medicine than she lets on." Rivera glanced toward Maya, who was now performing a routine assessment on a patient with chest pain. "What makes you say that, Director?" "Watch her hands," Santos replied. "She's not just checking vital signs. She's assessing in a specific sequence that prioritizes life-threatening conditions first. That's not standard EA thinking. That's battlefield medicine thinking." As if sensing their attention, Maya looked up and met Santos's eyes across the department. For just a moment, the director saw something flicker in her expression, a depth of knowledge and experience that seemed impossible for someone with her official record. Then it was gone, replaced by the familiar mask of professional competence. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story, the rest of the day passed in routine cases, minor injuries, medication refills, the occasional chest pain that turned out to be indigestion. But Santos couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Dr. Maya Chun than anyone realized. She'd seen enough classified medical personnel files to know that sometimes the most valuable doctors were the ones who worked hardest to appear ordinary. That evening, as Maya packed up her stethoscope and prepared to leave for her modest apartment near the hospital, she didn't notice Santos making a discreet phone call to someone in the medical credentialing office. She was too busy trying not to think about the photograph hidden in her desk drawer. 5 doctors in field uniforms, arms crossed, standing in front of a makeshift field hospital with Crisis Response Unit Alpha painted on a canvas sign. She was in the center of that photograph, the only woman, the youngest face, wearing the unit director's insignia. 4 of those doctors were dead now. She was the only survivor of Alpha Unit, and the only one who remembered what it felt like to be truly alive in the chaos of a disaster zone. But tomorrow would be another day of routine cases, another day of being invisible, another day of pretending that the most dangerous thing she'd ever done was insert a central line. The young doctors would continue their jokes, never knowing that the woman they called backup had once been the most skilled disaster medicine specialist in the entire humanitarian corps. Some secrets were worth keeping. Some legends were safer in the shadows. At least that's what she told herself every night when she lay awake listening to the sound of ambulance sirens in the distance and remembering what it felt like to be at the center of the storm. The anonymous email arrived in Director Santos's inbox at 6:30 a.m. marked Urgent Personnel Inquiry. The subject line read, "Emergency Physician Background Verification Required." Santos frowned as she opened the message. It was professionally written but unsigned, requesting a comprehensive review of Dr. Maya Chun's service record. The sender claimed to have concerns about potential credential discrepancies and suggested that Chen might have access to critical hospital systems beyond her authorization level. What bothered Santos most wasn't the email itself, anonymous. Tips weren't uncommon in medical institutions. What bothered her was the timing. 3 days earlier, she'd received a similar inquiry from the hospital's credentialing committee, triggered by her own phone call. Meanwhile, Maya was having the worst morning of her 4-year exile. The hospital's emergency response system had crashed overnight, leaving her with no way to coordinate the mandatory interdepartmental protocols required for the day's mass casualty drill. Without those protocols, the entire emergency preparedness certification would be delayed by at least a week. Dr. Reynolds appeared at her shoulder like a bad omen. "What's the holdup, backup? We've got a full surgical schedule today, alongside this drill nonsense." "System failure," Maya replied, not looking up from the manual reboot sequence she was attempting. "I'm working on it." Reynolds' voice carried the particular edge of a surgeon whose schedule had been disrupted. "Work faster. We've got accreditation inspectors coming next week, and Director Santos wants everything running perfectly." Maya's fingers paused over the keyboard. She knew exactly what was wrong with the system: a corrupted network protocol that would take the IT department 3 hours to identify and fix. She also knew a workaround that could have the system operational in 15 minutes, but it would require accessing administrative protocols the emergency staff weren't supposed to know existed. "How long?" Reynolds pressed. "Standard protocol says I need to wait for IT support. Could be 3 to 4 hours. 3 to 4 hours? Reynolds' voice rose loud enough to attract attention from across the department. "That's unacceptable. We have millions in funding at stake because you can't fix a computer." Dr. Wilson joined the conversation, her young face flushed with the indignation of someone who'd never been responsible for an actual crisis. "This is exactly why women don't belong in critical positions. When the pressure's on, they can't handle it." The comment hung in the air like ethanol fumes. Maya felt every eye in the emergency department turn toward her, waiting to see how she'd respond to the blatant sexism. She could hear the whispered conversation starting, the subtle shift in atmosphere that happened when professional competence became a gender issue. "I'm following standard safety protocols," she said evenly. "Emergency response systems can't be bypassed without proper authorization." Reynolds stepped closer, his voice dropping to a tone that somehow managed to be both private and publicly performative. "Listen, Chun, I don't know what kind of medical experience you had before coming here, but this is a top-tier hospital. We don't have time for by-the-book procedures when there are workarounds available." "There are no authorized workarounds for this system," Maya replied, which was technically true. The workaround she knew about wasn't in any manual. "Then maybe you're not the right person for this job," Wilson added. "Maybe we need someone who can think outside the box when the situation demands it." Maya looked up from the computer screen, her brown eyes meeting Wilson's gaze with steady calm. "You want me to compromise patient safety protocols to accommodate a training schedule?" "I want you to do whatever it takes to get our hospital back on track," Reynolds said. "That's what we pay you for." The conversation was attracting more attention now. Other doctors were gathering, along with nursing staff and hospital personnel. Maya realized she was being put on display, her competence questioned in front of everyone who mattered in the hospital. She could feel the weight of their expectations, the unspoken assumption that she would either perform a miracle or prove herself inadequate. It was a no-win situation, carefully constructed by people who'd never had to make life or death decisions in the span of a heartbeat. "I'll see what I can do," she said finally. Maya turned back to the computer, her fingers moving across the keyboard with practiced efficiency. She accessed the system's diagnostic mode, bypassed the corrupted protocol through a backdoor command, and manually initiated the emergency response interface. The screen flickered twice, then displayed the familiar green status indicators. "System online," she announced. "You can begin your disaster drill preparations." The department erupted in surprised murmurs. Reynolds stared at the screen, his expression shifting from irritation to confusion, to something that might have been suspicion. "How did you do that?" he asked. "Experience," Maya replied, already moving toward her next patient. But Director Santos was watching from her office again, and this time she wasn't the only one taking notes. Nurse Manager Rivera had observed the entire exchange, supposedly for staff performance evaluation purposes. The timestamp would show that Maya had accomplished in 12 minutes what should have taken the IT department 4 hours. As the doctors dispersed to begin their delayed drill preparations, Santos approached Maya with a credentials verification form. "Need you to sign off on this system access," she said casually. But when Maya looked at the form, she realized it wasn't a routine verification. It was a security clearance form requesting confirmation of her technical certifications and system access levels. "Director, I'm not authorized to sign clearance verifications," she said. "According to the system, you accessed administrative protocols this morning," Santos replied quietly. "That requires Level 2 security clearance. Your file says you're Level 1. Maya felt the first real flutter of panic she'd experienced in 4 years. The system was malfunctioning. "I used standard troubleshooting procedures." "No, you didn't," Santos said, not unkindly. "I've been overseeing hospital systems for 20 years. What you did this morning was advanced systems administration. That's not emergency medicine work. That's the kind of knowledge that comes from specialized training." Their eyes met across the form, and Maya saw something that frightened her more than mortar fire ever had: recognition. Santos knew she was hiding something, and she wasn't going to let it go. "I learned some things in my previous assignment," she said carefully. "Your previous assignment was emergency medicine at City General," Santos replied. "I checked. They don't teach advanced computer systems there." Maya signed the form without another word, but her hand was shaking slightly. As she walked away, she could feel Santos's eyes following her, could sense the questions multiplying in the director's mind like fractures in bone under stress. That evening, she sat in her small apartment and stared at the hidden photograph for the first time in months. 5 doctors in field uniforms, young and confident, and completely unaware that 4 of them would be dead within a year. She'd thought she could hide forever. She'd thought her secret was safe in the classified files that only 3 people had ever read. But secrets had a way of revealing themselves when you least expected it, especially when you were too good at your job. The phone rang, startling her out of her reverie. The caller ID showed a number she didn't recognize, but the voice was familiar. "Dr. Chun, this is Director Santos. I need to see you in my office first thing tomorrow morning. We need to discuss your service record." The line went dead, leaving Maya alone with the growing certainty that her 4 years of hiding were about to come to an end. Director Santos's office felt smaller than usual when Maya entered at 8 a.m. sharp. The walls were lined with commendations, photographs of hospital fundraisers, and a massive framed copy of the Hippocratic Oath that seemed to dominate the space. Santos sat behind her desk, a thick manila folder spread open before her. "Sit down, Chun," she said without looking up. Maya remained standing. "Director, if this is about yesterday's computer issue, I followed all safety protocols. This isn't about the computer." Santos finally looked up, her gray eyes sharp with the kind of scrutiny that made junior doctors sweat. "This is about your background check." The folder contained her official employment record, but Maya could see additional documents clipped to the inside cover. Someone had been digging deeper than the standard personnel files. "When you transferred to Westlake Memorial 4 years ago, you listed your previous position as emergency physician at City General," Santos continued. "But City General has no record of your advanced systems training. In fact, they have no record of you receiving any specialized technical education beyond standard medical protocols." Maya kept her expression neutral. "I've always been good with computers, self-taught mostly." "Self-taught?" Santos picked up a printed report from the Kandi folder. "According to Nurse Rivera's documentation, you accessed Level 2 administrative protocols yesterday morning. That's not self-taught capability. That's specialized training that requires months of coursework and security clearance. The trap was closing with clinical precision. Maya realized that Rivera hadn't just been observing for performance evaluation purposes. He'd been documenting evidence of security protocol violations. Director, the system was malfunctioning. I use standard troubleshooting procedures. Santos leaned back in her chair, studying Maya's face. Chun, I've been in hospital administration for 22 years. I've seen every kind of cover-up, every kind of lie, and every kind of half-truth that people use to hide their mistakes. But you're not lying to me. You're hiding something much bigger. Before Maya could respond, the office door opened. Dr. William Harper, Chief of Medicine, entered carrying another folder that looked suspiciously official. Director, you wanted to see this, Harper said, placing the folder on Santos's desk. Santos opened it and read for several long moments. Her expression shifted from skepticism to confusion to something that might have been recognition. Chun, she said slowly. This is a classified personnel inquiry I submitted to the International Medical Corps yesterday. I asked them to verify your complete service history, including any records that might be above my clearance level. Maya felt her heart rate increase. Director, I don't understand. The IMC's response is interesting, Santos continued. They confirm that you've been serving as an emergency physician for 8 years, but they also note that your personnel file contains classified sections that require Level 4 security clearance to access. She looked up from the document. I have Level 3 clearance, Chun. I can access every personnel file in this hospital except yours. The only files that require Level 4 clearance are for crisis response directors with international operations. Backgrounds. The silence in the office was deafening. Maya could hear her own heartbeat, could feel sweat beginning to form on her palms despite the air conditioning. Furthermore, Santos continued, the IMC inquiry triggered an automatic security review. They're sending a team here next week to investigate potential credential violations. If they find that you've been accessing systems above your clearance level, or if they discover that you've been concealing your true qualifications, you could face medical board review. Harper stepped forward. Chun, I've been watching you for months. The way you move through crisis situations, the way you understand emergency protocols, the way you knew exactly how to fix that computer yesterday. You're not just an emergency physician. I'm good at my job, Maya said, but her voice lacked conviction. You're too good at your job, Santos replied. And that's what's going to get you in trouble. The director stood up and walked to the keel window overlooking the ambulance bay. You know what I think, Chun? I think your former crisis response, or disaster medicine, or something else that explains why your file is classified. And I think you've been hiding it because you screwed up somewhere along the way. She turned back to face Maya. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me the truth right now, or I'm going to recommend that you be transferred to a non-critical position pending the credential investigation. That means no access to the emergency department, no access to critical patients, and no access to anything more sensitive than routine checkups. Maya felt the walls closing in around her. 4 years of careful hiding, 4 years of maintaining the perfect cover, and it was all falling apart because she'd been too competent at fixing a computer. I can't tell you what's in my classified file, she said finally. But I can tell you that I've never compromised patient care, never shared classified information, and never done anything that would endanger this hospital or its patients. That's not good enough, Santos replied. The IMC team arrives in 5 days. If they find evidence of credential violations, you'll be facing professional review. Your only chance is to come clean now and hope they show mercy. Harper pulled out a chair and sat down across from Maya. Look, I've been in this business for 30 years. I've seen good doctors destroy their careers trying to hide things that weren't even that serious. Whatever you're running from, it can't Be worse than what you're facing now. Maya looked between the two senior physicians, seeing genuine concern in their expressions. They weren't trying to destroy her. They were trying to help her avoid destroying herself. But they didn't understand what she was really hiding, or why she'd been willing to spend 4 years in exile to keep it secret. I need time to think, she said. You have until 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, Santos replied. After that, I file my report recommending your transfer to non-critical duties. Once that happens, the investigation becomes automatic, and there's nothing I can do to help you. As Maya walked back to the emergency department, she felt the weight of every decision she'd made over the past 4 years. She'd thought she was protecting herself by hiding, but she'd actually been building a house of cards that was finally collapsing. The young residents were already treating patients, their voices echoing as they discussed cases with the casual confidence of people who'd never faced true disaster. Dr. Reynolds's voice carried across the room as he explained a complex diagnosis with the certainty of someone who'd never had to make life or death decisions with incomplete information. Maya stood in the middle of the emergency department, surrounded by the equipment she'd been using for 4 years, and realized that her time as backup was coming to an end. The only question was whether she'd go out quietly or finally reveal the truth that had been burning inside her for 4 years. That evening, she pulled out the hidden photograph and stared at the faces of her dead colleagues. Dr. Marcus Rivera, lost during an earthquake response when a collapsed building trapped him with critical patients. Dr. Amelia Patel, killed by crossfire while treating children in a conflict zone. Dr. James Wilson, succumbed to an infectious disease outbreak he was fighting to contain. Dr. Thomas Jang, died during a hurricane evacuation when he refused to leave critical patients. 4 doctors dead, and she was the only one left to remember Crisis Response Unit Alpha, the only one left to carry the weight of what they'd accomplished and what they'd lost. She had less than 12 hours to decide whether to let that legacy die with her or to risk everything by revealing who she really was. The decision, when it came, surprised her with its simplicity. She'd been hiding for 4 years, and she was tired of being afraid. It was time to stop running from the past and start fighting for the future. Maya didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table with a yellow legal pad, writing and crossing out different versions of the same impossible conversation. How do you tell your hospital director that you're not who you claim to be? How do you explain 4 years of deception to people who trusted you? At 5 a.m., she made her decision. Instead of going to Santos's office, she walked to the secure communication center in the basement of the hospital administration building. The duty officer, communication specialist Alex Patel, looked surprised to see an emergency physician in his normally restricted area. I need to make a classified call, Maya said, presenting her ID badge. Patel checked her credentials against his access list. Sorry, Dr. Chun. Emergency physicians don't have authorization for secure communications. Check again, Maya sighed quietly. Look for any special annotations on my file. Patel frowned but ran her ID through the system again. This time, his expression changed completely. Holy, he whispered, then caught himself. I mean, yes, ma'am. You're cleared for level 4 communications. I'll set you up in booth 3. Maya had memorized the number 4 years ago, never thinking she'd actually use it. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Dr. Eliza Montgomery, World Health Organization Special Operations. Ma'am, this is Dr. Maya Chun. Designation Crisis Alpha. I need to invoke Article 7 of the International Medical Corps Protection Protocol. The line was silent for nearly 10 seconds. Dr. Chun, your file indicates you've been inactive for 4 years. Are you currently under duress? Negative, ma'am, but my cover has been compromised. I need authorization to reveal my true service record to my hospital director. Another pause. Stand by. Maya waited, knowing that Dr. Montgomery was accessing files that existed in only one location in the entire WHO headquarters, files that contained the truth about Crisis Response Unit Alpha, about the classified missions that had never been officially acknowledged, about the doctor who had voluntarily buried her own reputation to escape the weight of survivor's guilt. Dr. Chun, you're authorized to reveal your service record to Director Santos and up to 3 other personnel of your choosing. A complete file packet will be delivered to Director Santos within 2 hours. Is there anything else you need? Just one thing, ma'am. How much trouble am I in? Dr. Montgomery's voice softened slightly. Maya, you've been carrying a load that would have broken most people. The fact that you're still serving, still healing patients, tells me everything I need to know about your character. You're not in trouble. You're coming home. At 8 a.m., Maya knocked on Director Santos's office door. She was already seated behind her desk, the same manila folder opened in front of her. Chun, I hope you're here to tell me the truth. Yes, Director. But first, you're going to receive a classified delivery from the World Health Organization. I recommend you read it before we continue this conversation. Santos raised an eyebrow. You contacted the WHO? I contacted someone who's been waiting 4 years for me to make that call. As if on cue, there was a sharp knock on the door. A courier in official WHO attire entered, carrying a sealed envelope marked with classification stamps that made Santos's eyes widen. Director Santos, I have a delivery requiring your personal signature and immediate review. Santos signed for the envelope, checked the classification level, and looked at Maya with new respect. This is level 4 classified. Read it, Director. Then we'll talk. Santos opened the envelope and began reading. Maya watched her expression change from confusion to amazement to something approaching awe. The document was comprehensive: mission reports, casualty statistics, commendations, and a complete record of the classified operations that had made Crisis Response Unit Alpha legendary in certain circles. Jesus Christ, she whispered. You're Dr. Maya Chen, Crisis Alpha Director. 17 disaster responses, over 2,000 lives saved, 0 mission failures until... She looked up. Dr. Rivera was your deputy. He died during the Indonesian earthquake response. Yes, Director. He died because I ordered him to lead patient evacuation from the most dangerous sector. Santos continued reading. After his death, you voluntarily requested transfer to standard medical duties and had your entire service record classified. You've been hiding in plain sight for 4 years. Yes, Director. Santos set down the document and studied Maya's face. Do you have any idea what this means? You're one of the most accomplished disaster medicine specialists in history. We have young doctors here who study your protocols in medical school, and they don't even know you're real. Maya remained standing at attention. Director, I've been serving to the best of my ability in my assigned position. I've never compromised patient care or endangered hospital operations. Is it your choice to make? Santos walked to the window again. Chun, we're facing a healthcare crisis. Budget cuts, staffing shortages, increasing natural disasters. We need experienced crisis leaders more than ever, and I've got a living legend stitching up minor lacerations. Before Maya could respond, the door burst open. Dr. Harper entered without knocking, his face pale with excitement. Director, we've got a problem. There's been a major chemical plant explosion on the north side of the city. Initial reports are suggesting hundreds of casualties, toxic exposure, structural collapses. The county emergency system is activating all hospitals. Santos grabbed her phone. Emergency department, what's our status? The phone crackled with static. Director, we're already at capacity from that multi-car pileup this morning. We've got 60 critical patients, and all surgeons are in them. Reynolds says we can't handle more than another 20 casualties maximum. Send out the hospital-wide emergency alert. Call in all off-duty personnel, Santos ordered. Director, even with everyone called in, we don't have the specialized equipment or protocols for a mass casualty toxic exposure event. The emergency charge nurse responded. The closest hospital with that capability is 3 hours away. The command center fell silent. Maya could hear the desperation in the nurse's voice, could feel the weight of hundreds of lives hanging in the balance. Santos looked at her with sudden realization. Chun, you're the only crisis-qualified physician in this hospital right now. Director, I haven't led a mass response in 4 years. I'm not current on protocols. Not cleared for command operations. You're cleared for whatever I say you're cleared for, Santos interrupted. And according to this file, you've got more disaster experience than every other doctor in this hospital combined. Harper stepped forward. Doctor, there are hundreds of people out there who might be dying. They need help now, not in 3 hours when the specialists arrive. Maya felt the familiar weight of command decision settling on her shoulders. It was the same feeling she'd had 17 times before, the moment when everything else faded away except the mission and the people who needed her. Director, I'll need full access to all hospital systems. I'll need emergency credentials activated for specialty areas. And I'll need someone to coordinate with the county emergency services. Done, Santos said. Harper, get Dr. Chun whatever she needs. As they rushed toward the emergency command center, Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in 4 years, the electric anticipation of stepping back into crisis leadership where she belonged. The backup doctor was about to become Crisis Alpha again. And this time she wasn't going to hide from who she really was. The disaster was calling, and she was finally ready to answer. The hospital command center had been activated, its wall screens displaying emergency feeds from around the city. Toxic yellow-green clouds billowed from the remains of the chemical plant. First responders in hazmat suits were already evacuating the immediate area, but the casualty numbers were climbing by the minute. Current estimate is 200 critically injured, with potentially 300 more with exposure symptoms. Emergency Coordinator Jeff Martinez reported. County resources are overwhelmed. They're asking all area hospitals to prepare for surge capacity. Maya approached the command center with the careful precision of someone returning to a sacred place after a long exile. The hospital is at full capacity, and our decontamination area can only handle 6 patients at a time, Dr. Harper reported, running through the emergency preparedness checklist. All ORS are currently in use, and we have limited supply of chemical neutralizers. But Dr. Chun, most of our staff have never handled mass casualty toxic exposures. Maya was already reviewing the hospital schematics, her eyes moving over the diagrams with muscle memory that 4 years of hiding couldn't erase. Dr. Harper, we need to convert the ambulance bay and front parking area into a decontamination zone. Get maintenance to set up portable shower stations and privacy barriers. I need hazmat suits for triage teams and all the chemical neutralizers you can find. Hazmat suits? We only have training suits for drills, not actual. Check the emergency preparedness storage in sub-basement 2, Maya interrupted. Access code 9741. There's a cache of disaster response equipment that was placed in all major hospitals after the Arlington chemical spill 5 years ago. Most hospital administrators don't even know it exists. The command center fell silent. Director Santos's voice crackled through the communication system. All personnel, this is a level 1 emergency activation. Dr. Maya Chun is now acting as incident commander with full authority over all hospital operations. She holds crisis response certification at the highest level. Follow her instructions exactly as given. Maya took the central position at the command console, her mind already calculating patient flow patterns, decontamination sequences, and triage categories. Command Center, this is Crisis Alpha, Maya said, her voice steady and professional. "I'm initiating emergency protocol Delta 7. All non-essential personnel will evacuate to sister facilities. All available beds will be cleared through immediate discharge or transfer of stable patients. Convert the cafeteria to a secondary treatment area and the conference center to a family reunification zone." The operations officer looked confused. "Dr. Chun, we don't have a Delta 7 protocol in our emergency manual." "You do now," Maya replied, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she uploaded files from a secure server. "I designed it specifically for chemical exposure mass casualties. The protocols are being distributed to your stations now." The ambulance screamed into the hospital's makeshift decontamination zone, its sirens competing with the chaos of the emergency response. Maya stood at the entrance of the first triage station, her standard blue scrubs replaced by a yellow hazmat suit, her face barely visible behind the protective mask. Around her, the hospital parking lot had transformed into a military-grade field hospital in less than 40 minutes. "First wave incoming," shouted Nurse Rivera. 20 critical, 30 moderate." Maya stepped forward as the ambulance doors flew open. The smell of industrial chemicals and burned flesh hit her even through the protective gear. Inside, 4 patients lay strapped to gurneys, their skin blistered and airways compromised from chemical exposure. Adult male, approximately 30 years. Chemical burns to 60% of body surface, respiratory distress. Called the paramedic. Without hesitation, Maya climbed into the ambulance, her trained eyes already assessing, categorizing, deciding. Direct to decontamination station 1, then trauma bay for intubation and fluid resuscitation. Another ambulance arrived, then another. Within minutes, the carefully designed system Maya had implemented was processing patients at 5 times the hospital's normal capacity. Decontamination teams stripped and washed victims before passing them to triage doctors who directed them to appropriate treatment areas. "Dr. Chun, we've got a pediatric victim with severe inhalation injuries," called a nurse from Station 3. Maya moved through the chaos with preternatural calm, her commands clear and precise. "Set up pediatric bronchoscopy in treatment area 2. Get respiratory therapy down here with the specialized equipment from the 3rd floor storage." "We don't have pediatric bronchoscopy equipment in treatment area 2, the nurse protested. "You do as of 20 minutes ago," Maya replied. "I had it transferred from pediatric intensive care." In the command center, Director Santos watched the operation unfold on surveillance monitors. What she was seeing defied everything she knew about emergency medicine. The hospital was handling a patient load that should have been impossible, with a level of organization that seemed superhuman. "She's anticipated everything," Dr. Harper whispered beside her. "Look at the patient flow. Patterns. Each victim moved through decontamination, triage, treatment, and either admission or discharge without backtracking or bottlenecks. I've never seen anything like it." Santos nodded. "That's why her unit was legendary. This isn't just good medicine. This is combat-level crisis response." On the main monitor, they watched as Maya intercepted a team wheeling a critically injured child toward the main building. "Stop!" Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. "This patient hasn't been properly decontaminated. The chemical residue on his clothes will contaminate the entire treatment area." The young resident in charge looked stricken. "But Dr. Chun, he's crashing." "We don't have time." "Make time," Maya ordered, already moving to the child's side. She checked his airway, noted the rapid, shallow breathing, and made a split-second decision. "Bring the intubation equipment here. We'll stabilize him during decontamination." As the team scrambled to comply, Maya began cutting away the child's contaminated clothing. With practiced hands, she established in 4 while instructing the decontamination team on the proper chemical neutralizers to use. "But the protocols say," the resident began. The protocols weren't written for an 8-year-old with pulmonary edema, Maya interrupted. Adapt or lose the patient. Within minutes, she had intubated the child and stabilized his breathing while the decontamination process continued. When it was complete, she nodded to the team. Now he's ready for transport. Pediatric intensive care with isolation precautions. Back in the command center, the phone rang with an incoming call from the County Emergency Management Director. "This is Director Santos." "Director, we're getting reports that Westlake Memorial is processing patients at unprecedented speed. You've already treated over 100 victims while other hospitals are still setting up their response. What the hell is going on over there?" Santos looked at the monitor showing Maya moving efficiently between triage stations. "We've activated our crisis response protocols under the direction of a specialist." "What specialist?" "We didn't deploy any federal assets to your location." "She was already here," Santos replied. "And right now, she's saving hundreds of lives." 3 hours into the crisis, the situation was evolving rapidly. The initial surge of patients had been processed, with critical cases stabilized and in treatment. Maya stood in the center of the operation, monitoring each aspect of the response while continually adjusting the protocols to match changing conditions. Dr. Reynolds approached, his surgical scrubs splattered with blood from back to back. Operations. For once, his confident demeanor was replaced by genuine humility. "Dr. Chun, we're out of ventilators for the chemical pneumonitis cases," he reported. "We've got 6 more patients who need respiratory support immediately." Maya didn't hesitate. "Convert the anesthesia machines from operating rooms 5 through 10 to serve as temporary ventilators. The crisis protocol includes the conversion specifications." Reynolds stared at her in disbelief. "That's actually brilliant. How did you know that would work?" "Because I've done it before," Maya replied, already moving to the next crisis point. "Aleppo, 2019. We ran out of ventilators during a chemical weapons attack." The revelation stunned Reynolds into silence. This was not the backup Dr. Heeg mocked just yesterday. This was someone who had faced challenges he couldn't imagine and developed solutions he'd never considered. "Chun," Director Santos's voice came through the command channel. "We've got a new problem. The east wind is shifting the chemical cloud toward the River Heights district. County Emergency is evacuating another 15,000 people, many with early exposure symptoms. They want to know our remaining capacity." Maya quickly calculated resources, bed space, and staff endurance. "Tell them we can handle another 100 critical and 200 moderate cases. But we'll need additional medical staff to maintain this pace." "The National Guard medical units are 3 hours out," Santos replied. "Can we hold until then?" Maya looked around at the hospital staff working at the edge of exhaustion. "We don't have a choice. Those people need help now, not in 3 hours." She switched to the hospital-wide channel. "All personnel, this is Crisis Alpha. We're about to receive a second wave of casualties. I know you're tired. I know you've already done the impossible today. But there are families out there who need us to do it again." Her voice carried through every treatment area, reaching doctors, nurses, and support staff who had been working non-stop for hours. "Each of you has shown extraordinary courage and skill today. Now I'm asking you to dig deeper. Remember why you chose medicine. Remember the oath we all took. We hold the line until reinforcements arrive." The response was immediate. Exhausted, staff straightened their shoulders. Supplies were redistributed. Treatment areas were reset for new arrivals. The collective resolve of the entire hospital seemed to strengthen in response to Maya's words. Dr. Harper approached her, his face showing both exhaustion and awe. "I've never seen anything like this. They're responding to you like a team fighting for survival," Maya finished. "Because that's exactly what we are." As the second wave of ambulances began arriving, Maya adjusted her command approach. She moved critical resources to the front of the response chain, implemented rotating rest periods for staff, and personally joined the most difficult cases. In Treatment Area 4, a family of 5 arrived together, all suffering from severe chemical exposure. The parents were unconscious, the 3 children terrified and struggling to breathe. "Dr. Chen, the children are refusing to be separated from their parents," reported a frustrated nurse. "We can't treat them effectively if they won't cooperate." Maya knelt down to eye level with the oldest child, a girl of about 10. Despite the hazmat suit that concealed her features, she managed to project calm reassurance. "My name is Dr. Maya," she said gently. "I understand you're scared and you want to stay with your mom and dad." The girl nodded, tears cutting tracks through the residual chemical dust on her face. "Your parents need special medicine to help them breathe better, and so do you and your brothers," Maya continued. "I promise we're going to take excellent care of all of you. But what if they die while I'm not there?" The girl whispered, voicing her deepest fear. Maya felt the weight of that question in her chest. It was the same fear she'd carried in 17 disaster zones, the same fear that had haunted her since losing her team. "I won't let that happen," she said firmly. "And I need your help. Your brothers look up to you, don't they?" The girl nodded again. "Then they need to see you being brave. If you let us help you, they'll let us help them too. Can you be brave for your brothers?" The girl straightened her shoulders, making a visible effort to control her fear. "I can try." "That's all anyone can do," Maya replied. "Now I'm going to personally check on your parents every 30 minutes, and I'll come tell you how they're doing. Deal?" "Deal," the girl whispered. Maya stood and turned to the nurse. "Family updates every 30 minutes, no exceptions. These children have lost enough today. They won't lose faith in us, too." As she walked away, Dr. Reynolds fell into step beside her. "I've never seen anyone handle pediatric trauma victims like that. Where did you learn that approach?" Maya continued walking, her eyes scanning for the next crisis point. Sudan, 2018. Civil war separated hundreds of children from their parents. We learned quickly that psychological trauma can kill as surely as physical injuries. Reynolds struggled to reconcile this new reality with his previous assumptions. "Chun, I owe you an apology. I had no idea. This isn't about you or me," Maya cut him off. "It's about the next patient who needs our help. Apologize by saving lives." 6 hours into the crisis, the situation had stabilized enough for Maya to return briefly to the command center. Her hazmat suit was stained with sweat, blood, and chemical residue. When she removed her mask, her face showed the pressure marks of prolonged wear, but her eyes remained clear and focused. "Status report," she requested. Director Santos looked up from the coordination desk. "We've processed 347 patients so far. 86 critical, all currently stable. 142 moderate, being treated. 119 minor. Most already discharged to make room for new arrivals." "Casualties?" Maya asked the question that had been weighing on her since the first ambulance arrived. 3 dead on arrival, 2 lost during treatment. Given the scale and nature of this disaster, that's 5 too many, Maya finished quietly. Santos shook her head in amazement. "Chun, the expected mortality rate for this type of incident is close to 15%. You've kept it under 2%. That's nothing short of miraculous." Maya didn't acknowledge the praise. "The National Guard units? ETA 90 minutes. County emergency is reporting the chemical cloud has dissipated and the plant fire is contained. We're through the worst of it. For the first time in 6 hours, Maya allowed herself to take a deep breath. Rotate staff to mandatory rest periods. No one works more than 4 hours without at least 30 minutes down. And get nutritional support to all treatment areas." "Already done," Santos replied. "On your standing orders from 3 hours ago." Maya nodded, the ghost of a smile touching her lips. I should get back out there. Chun, Santos called as she turned to leave. What you've done today. I've never seen anything like it. It's not me, Maya said simply. It's what Crisis Alpha was trained to do. As she walked back toward the treatment areas, Dr. Harper fell into step beside her. The word is spreading. Throughout the hospital, people know who you really are now. That doesn't matter, Maya replied. What matters is that we still have patients who need treatment. But it does matter, Harper insisted. Do you have any idea what it means to these young doctors to see Crisis Alpha in action? They've studied your protocols in medical school, discussed your case studies, debated your techniques. You're a legend to them. Maya stopped walking and turned to face him. Dr. Harper, legends don't save lives. Hard work, preparation, and teamwork save lives. If these young doctors want to learn something from today, they should learn that. Before Harper could respond, Maya's radio crackled with urgency. Dr. Chun to Decontamination Station 1. We have structural collapse with multiple trapped victims. Maya broke into a run, Harper following close behind. They arrived at the station to find chaos. Part of the temporary decontamination structure had collapsed, trapping 3 staff members and 2 patients under metal and plastic debris. Status, Maya demanded. The wind shifted suddenly and took down the structure, a nurse reported. We can hear them under there, but we can't get to them. Fire rescue is tied up at the plant site. As the team assembled, Maya stripped off her bulky hazmat gear, keeping only the essential protective equipment. I need mobility for this, she explained to Harper's questioning look. With quick, precise commands, she organized the rescue effort. Using the aluminum poles as makeshift support struts, they stabilized the collapsed structure enough to create an access point. I'm going in, Maya announced. It's too dangerous, Harper protested. Let's wait for rescue services. Maya was already on her hands and knees at the edge of the opening. There are 5 people under there who don't have time to wait. This is what I'm trained for. Without further discussion, she crawled into the narrow space beneath the collapsed structure. The darkness was almost complete, broken only by the beam of the headlamp she'd strapped on. Hello, she called. This is Dr. Chun. Can anyone hear? N.E.? Over here, a weak voice responded. We're trapped behind the main panel. Maya navigated carefully through the debris, mindful of the unstable structure above her. She found 2 nurses and a patient huddled in a small pocket where the collapsing materials had created an accidental shelter. Are any of you injured? She asked, already checking the patient's vital signs. Bruises, maybe a broken wrist, one of the nurses replied. But Sarah and Dr. Wilson are still trapped further in. We couldn't reach them. Maya nodded. I'm going to get you out first, then go for the others. Follow my path exactly and move slowly. One by one, she guided them back through the debris field to the opening where Harper and the others waited. Then, without hesitation, she turned, crawled deeper into the collapsed structure. The space grew tighter, the air thicker with dust and chemical residue. Maya's training kicked in, controlling her breathing, moving with precision, constantly assessing structural stability. Sarah? Dr. Wilson? She called. A faint moan answered her. Maya followed the sound to find a young nurse pinned under a fallen support beam with Dr. Wilson, one of the residents who had often joined Reynolds in mocking her, lying unconscious nearby. Sarah, I'm here to get you out, Maya said calmly, already examining the beam that trapped the nurse. Dr. Wilson hit his head, Sarah gasped. He was trying to protect me when it collapsed. Maya checked Wilson quickly, unconscious but stable. I'm going to move this beam off you, then we'll get both of you out. It's too heavy, Sarah protested weakly. Not with the right leverage, Maya replied, already positioning a piece of debris as a makeshift fulcrum. When I lift, I need you to pull yourself free immediately. Can you do that? The nurse nodded, her face pale with pain and fear. With careful positioning and years of experience in improvised rescue techniques, Maya used the fulcrum to gain mechanical advantage on the beam. On 3. 1, 2, 3. She pushed down with all her strength, lifting the beam just enough for Sarah to drag herself free. The structure groaned ominously around them. "We need to move now," Maya urged, already gathering the unconscious Dr. Wilson into a fireman's carry across her shoulders. This whole thing could come down any minute. With Sarah limping behind her, Maya navigated back through the debris field, carrying Wilson despite the cramped space and her own exhaustion. The journey seemed to take hours, though it was probably only minutes. Finally, they reached the opening. Hands reached in to take Wilson, then to help Sarah through. Maya was the last to emerge, covered in dust and sweat, but with all 5 trapped people saved. As the medical team rushed Wilson and Sarah to treatment, Harper stared at Maya in disbelief. "That was just doing my job," Maya replied simply, already turning her attention to the next crisis. But as she walked away, she heard Harper speaking quietly into his radio. "Command, be advised. Crisis Alpha just performed a confined space rescue with no equipment and extracted all victims alive. I think we need to reconsider everything we thought we knew about Dr. Chun." 8 hours into the crisis, the National Guard medical units finally arrived. Maya stood at the hospital entrance, personally briefing the incoming commander on the situation, patient status, and ongoing needs. "Colonel, we have the most critical patients in the main building, moderate cases in the auxiliary treatment areas, and a temporary morgue with 5 casualties," she reported with clinical precision. The National Guard colonel, a veteran of multiple disaster responses, looked around at the extraordinary operation with unconcealed amazement. "Dr. Chun, I've deployed to hurricanes, earthquakes, and combat zones. I've never seen a hospital handle this scale of disaster so effectively. County Emergency says you've processed over 500 patients in 8 hours. Maya nodded. 527, to be exact. We're currently at capacity with all treatment areas active. And you coordinated this entire response? The hospital staff executed the response, Maya corrected. I just provided the framework. The colonel studied her closely. Your name sounds familiar. Have we worked together before? Before Maya could answer, Director Santos approached. Colonel, Dr. Chun is the former director of Crisis Response Unit Alpha. She's been serving at our hospital undercover for the past 4 years. The colonel's eyes widened in recognition. Crisis Alpha? The WHO Special Response Team? I thought that unit was disbanded after the Indonesian earthquake disaster. It was, Maya said quietly. I'm the only one left. Understanding dawned on the colonel's face. It's an honor to meet you. Dr. Chun, your unit's protocols have become standard training for all our disaster response teams. Maya accepted this with a simple nod, then returned to business. Colonel, my staff has been operating at maximum capacity for 8 hours. They need relief. My teams are ready to take over, the colonel assured her. We'll integrate with your command structure and begin rotating your personnel out for rest periods immediately. As the National Guard teams deployed throughout the hospital grounds, Maya finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of her exhaustion. For 8 hours, she had held the line against chaos, making hundreds of life-or-death decisions without hesitation or error. Director Santos approached her again, concern evident in her expression. Chun, you've been going non-stop since this began. You need to rest. After we complete the handover, Maya replied, her voice hoarse from hours of giving commands through protective gear. The handover is complete, Santos insisted. The National Guard has assumed primary response duties. The chemical cloud has dissipated. The plant fire is contained. We did it. You did it. Maya looked around at the operation she had created. From nothing, the orderly treatment areas, the efficient patient flow, the dedicated staff who had followed her leadership without question. For the first time in 4 years, she had stepped fully into her true identity, and the result was hundreds of lives saved. 527 patients, she murmured. 5 casualties. 522 survivors, Santos corrected. 522 people who are alive right now because you were here today. Maya had no response to that. The number seemed simultaneously enormous and insufficient. In her mind, she could still see the faces of her lost team members, still hear their voices asking why she had survived when they had not. As if reading her thoughts, Santos added softly, "Your team would be proud of you today, Maya. This is what Crisis Alpha was meant to do." For the first time since the crisis began, Maya felt tears threatening. She blinked them back, maintaining the professional composure that had carried her through countless disasters. "I should check on the pediatric cases," she said, already turning toward the main building. "Dr. Chun," a voice called from across the ambulance bay. Maya turned to see the little girl she had treated earlier, the one who had been so frightened for her parents. She was sitting in a wheelchair, her brothers beside her, all 3 children looking remarkably improved. "My mom and dad are awake," the girl called, her face bright with relief and joy. "The nurses said you were the one who saved them. They said you saved everybody." Maya felt something shift inside her, a weight she had carried for 4 years, suddenly lighter. She walked over to the children, kneeling down to their level despite her exhaustion. "I didn't save everybody," she said gently, "but I'm very glad I could help your family." The girl reached out and took Maya's hand. "You promised you wouldn't let them die, and you didn't. You kept your promise." Those simple words, "you kept your promise," penetrated Maya's carefully. Constructed emotional barriers. For 4 years, she had lived with the weight of promises she couldn't keep, lives she couldn't save. But today, for this family and hundreds of others, she had made a difference. "Yes," she said softly, "I did." As she stood up, Maya noticed that the hospital staff had gathered around them. Doctors, nurses, technicians, support personnel. Everyone who had been part of the extraordinary response were watching her with expressions ranging from exhaustion to admiration to profound respect. Dr. Reynolds stepped forward, no trace of his usual arrogance visible. "Dr. Chun, on behalf of all of us, thank you. We couldn't have done this without you." Maya looked around at their faces, people who had worked beyond exhaustion, beyond fear, beyond their perceived limitations, to save hundreds of lives. "You're wrong," she said simply. In that moment, surrounded by colleagues who now knew her true identity and capabilities, Maya Chun finally accepted what she had been running from for 4 years, not just the trauma of losing her team, but the responsibility of being who she truly was. She wasn't just backup anymore. She was Crisis Alpha, and for the first time since Indonesia, that felt like something to embrace rather than escape. 3 days after the chemical plant disaster, Maya sat in Director Santos's office, watching the national news coverage playing silently on the wall-mounted television. The headlines scrolled beneath footage of the emergency response. Westlake Memorial saves hundreds in unprecedented crisis response. Images of the makeshift treatment areas, the decontamination zones, and the coordinated medical teams filled the screen. Maya's face never appeared in the footage. She had been careful to remain in protective gear throughout most of the crisis, her identity shielded from the media that had eventually descended on the scene. The official hospital statement credited exceptional emergency protocols and dedicated staff for the remarkable survival rate. Santos turned off the television and looked across her desk at Maya. "The final numbers are in. 542 patients treated, 5 fatalities, 0 preventable deaths. The CDC is calling it the most successful mass casualty response in American medical history." Maya nodded, her expression neutral despite the extraordinary achievement. The staff performed admirably. The staff followed your lead, Santos corrected. And speaking of your leadership, this arrived from the World Health Organization this morning. She slid a formal letter across the desk. Maya recognized the WHO letterhead and Dr. Montgomery's signature at the bottom. She scanned the contents. Quickly, her heart rate accelerating as she absorbed the implications. They want to reactivate Crisis Response Unit Alpha, she said, looking up from the letter, with me as director. Not just reactivate it, Santos replied. Expand it. Dr. Montgomery is proposing a global network of rapid response teams, trained in your protocols, ready to deploy to any medical disaster worldwide. They want you to build it from the ground up. Maya set the letter down carefully. I don't know if I'm the right person for this. What happened here was exactly what happens when you stop hiding your light, Santos interrupted. Maya, I've been in healthcare administration for over 2 decades. What you accomplished during that crisis wasn't just good medicine. It was transformative leadership. You didn't just treat patients. You elevated every medical professional around you. Before Maya could respond, the office door opened. Dr. Harper entered, carrying another folder marked with official stamps. Director, you wanted to see this, Harper said, placing the folder on Santos's desk. Santos opened it and began reading the contents. Her expression shifted from interest to surprise to something that might have been pride. Well, this is unexpected, she said after a moment. It seems our staff has been busy. She passed the folder to Maya, who found herself looking at a petition. Page after page of signatures, doctors, nurses, technicians, support staff, accompanied by a formal letter requesting that Dr. Maya Chen be appointed as Westlake Memorial's new Chief of Emergency Medicine and Crisis Response. Every department is represented, Harper explained. Surgery, internal medicine, pediatrics, even administration. They all witnessed what you did during the crisis. They want to learn from you. Maya turned the pages slowly, recognizing names of colleagues who had barely acknowledged her existence a week ago. Dr. Reynolds' signature appeared prominently on the first page, alongside a personal note. No one has taught me more in a single day than Dr. Chun. Our hospital needs her leadership. I don't understand, Maya said quietly. Before the crisis, most of these people didn't even know my name. They called me backup. And now they know why that nickname was both right and terribly wrong, Santos replied. You were never just a backup plan. You were always the best hope they never knew they had. Harper sat down across from Maya. Chun, I've been chief of medicine here for 15 years. In all that time, I've never seen our staff unite like this behind anyone. They're not just impressed by what you did. They're inspired by who you are. Maya looked between the two senior administrators, trying to process this unexpected turn of events. For 4 years, she had structured her entire existence around being invisible, unremarkable, forgettable. The idea of stepping deliberately into the spotlight felt almost physically painful. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course, Santos agreed. But while you're thinking, there's someone here who'd like to speak with you. She pressed a button on her desk phone. Send her in, please. The office door opened again, and a woman in a formal WHO uniform entered. Dr. Eliza Montgomery was shorter than Maya remembered, but her commanding presence remained unchanged. At 58, she carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who had faced the worst of humanity's crises and emerged with her compassion intact. Hello, Maya, she said warmly. It's been a long time. Maya stood automatically, military straight, despite her civilian clothes. Dr. Montgomery, I didn't know you were here. I caught the first flight from Geneva when I heard what happened, Montgomery replied. 500 lives saved in 12 hours? I had to see for myself what Crisis Alpha has become. The room fell silent as the two women regarded each other. There was history between them, mentor and protege, commander and field officer, shared triumphs and shared grief. Perhaps we could give them some privacy, Santa suggested, rising from her desk. When she and Harper had left, closing the door behind them, Montgomery approached Maya slowly. "You look well," she said. "Better than the last time I saw you." "Indonesia," Maya said quietly. "The earthquake, yes." Montgomery's expression softened with shared memory. "You were carrying Dr. Rivera's body when I found you. You refused to leave him behind, even with aftershocks threatening to bring down what was left of the hospital." Maya felt the familiar tightness in her chest that always accompanied these memories. "He died because I sent him to the East Wing. I should have recognized the structural weakness. You should have been exactly what you were." Montgomery interrupted gently. "A brilliant doctor making the best decisions possible with limited information in an impossible situation, just like you did 3 days ago." She gestured to the chair, and both women sat down. "Maya, I've reviewed the complete report of the chemical disaster response. What you accomplished here wasn't just impressive. It was literally unprecedented. You implemented Crisis Alpha protocols with civilian staff who had no specialized training, in a facility that wasn't designed for mass casualties, with minimal equipment and no preparation time." "I had good people to work with," Maya deflected. "You had ordinary medical professionals who became extraordinary under your leadership," Montgomery corrected. "That's always been your true gift, Maya. Not just your medical brilliance or your crisis management skills, but your ability to inspire others to transcend their limitations." She leaned forward, her expression intensifying. "That's why we need you back. Not just at WHO, but everywhere there's potential for disaster. The protocols you developed in Crisis Alpha have saved thousands of lives, but they need their creator to teach them, to evolve them, to show others how to implement them when it matters most." Maya stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the hospital grounds where, just days ago, hundreds of lives had hung in the balance. The temporary structures had been dismantled, the emergency equipment packed away. Everything looked normal again, but nothing felt normal to her. "I failed them, Eliza," she said, using Montgomery's first name for the first time in years. "Rivera, Patel, Wilson, Zhang. They trusted me, and they died." "Yes, they did," Montgomery acknowledged, her voice gentle but firm. "And 542 people are alive today because you survived to save them." She joined Maya at the window. "Do you know what Rivera said to me the day before the Indonesia deployment? He said, if anything happens to me, make sure Chen keeps going. She's the heart of this unit." Maya turned to her in surprise. "He said that?" He knew what the rest of us knew, that Crisis Alpha wasn't just about protocols or medical techniques. It was about your vision, your leadership, your refusal to accept preventable death as inevitable. Montgomery placed a hand on Maya's shoulder. "You didn't fail them, Maya. You honored them by continuing their work." For the first time in 4 years, Maya allowed herself to consider that possibility, that her survival wasn't a betrayal of her team, but a responsibility to carry forward what they had built together. "What exactly are you proposing?" she asked finally. Montgomery smiled, recognizing the shift in Maya's tone. "A new beginning. Crisis Response International, a network of medical disaster teams based in key locations worldwide, all trained in your methodologies. You would develop the protocols, train the team leaders, and coordinate global response strategies." "And where would I be based?" "Wherever you choose," Montgomery replied. "Geneva, if you want to work directly with WHO, Washington, if you prefer to coordinate with CDC and FEMA, or here," Maya finished, looking back at the hospital. "At Westlake. The petition from your colleagues suggests they would welcome that arrangement," Montgomery noted. "We could establish Westlake Memorial as the primary training center for the North American region. Your hospital would become the model for crisis response preparation worldwide. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. After 4 years of deliberate anonymity, Maya was being asked to step into a global leadership role, to transform her personal tragedy into a legacy that could save countless lives. "I need to visit the memorial garden," she said suddenly. Montgomery nodded in understanding. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready." Westlake Memorial's small garden was tucked away on the east side of the campus, a quiet space of reflection rarely visited by anyone except staff seeking a moment of peace during chaotic shifts. In the center stood a simple stone monument dedicated to healthcare workers who had lost their lives in service. Maya stood before it, thinking not of the names inscribed there, but of her own team, the faces in the photograph she had kept hidden for so long. She had brought the photo with her, and now she looked at it in the soft afternoon light. 5 doctors in field uniforms, standing proud and determined before their mission. 4 of them were gone now, their potential, their brilliance, their compassion lost to the world. But their spirit remained in the protocols they had helped develop, in the lives they had saved, in the example they had set. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered to their images. "Step back into the light. Become Crisis Alpha again." The garden remained silent, but as Maya stood there, memories surfaced, not of their deaths, but of their lives. Rivera's irrepressible humor during the darkest moments. Patel's meticulous attention to detail that had refined their triage protocols. Wilson's innovative equipment adaptations that had saved resources in resource-poor environments. Zhang's remarkable ability to communicate across language barriers during international deployments. They had been extraordinary, each in their own way, and they had chosen to follow her. "If I do this," she continued softly, "it won't be just for me. It will be for all of us, for what we believed in." The sound of footsteps on the garden path interrupted her thoughts. She turned to see Dr. Reynolds approaching, his usual confidence, replaced by an uncharacteristic hesitancy. "I'm sorry to intrude," he said, stopping a respectful distance away. "Director Santos said I might find you here." Maya tucked the photograph away. "What can I do for you, Dr. Reynolds?" "I wanted to thank you," he said simply. "Not just for what you did during the crisis, but for what you showed me about myself." Maya raised an eyebrow, waiting for him to continue. "I've spent my career believing that surgical skill was the pinnacle of medical achievement," Reynolds admitted. "I thought emergency physicians were just glorified triage officers, especially—" He hesitated, then forced himself to continue. "Especially women emergency physicians." "And now?" Maya prompted. "Now I understand that I've been measuring the wrong things," he said. "Watching you coordinate that disaster response, making hundreds of perfect decisions under impossible pressure, inspiring everyone around you to perform beyond their capabilities, I realized that true medical leadership is something I've never even approached." He gestured to the photograph partially visible in her hand. "Is that your team? The ones you lost?" Maya nodded, surprised by his perception. "May I see them?" After a moment's hesitation, she handed him the photograph. Reynolds studied it with genuine interest. "Crisis Response Unit Alpha," he read from the canvas sign in the background. "They look so young." "We were," Maya said softly. "Young and idealistic and convinced we could change how the world responds to medical disasters." Reynolds handed the photograph back carefully. "And did you?" "We developed protocols that reduced mortality in 17 disaster zones," Maya replied. "But there was still so much we wanted to do." "Like what?" The question caught her off guard. For 4 years, she had suppressed her visions for Crisis Alpha, buried the innovations and expansions she had once planned with her team. Now, surprisingly, they resurfaced with unexpected clarity. "Integrated regional response networks," she began slowly. "Standardized disaster medicine training for all emergency physicians. Pre-positioned equipment caches in vulnerable areas. Community resilience education to improve survival rates before professional help arrives. As she spoke, her voice grew stronger, more passionate. Reynolds listened with rapt attention as she outlined concepts that could revolutionize global disaster response. "That sounds like something worth building," he said when she finally paused. "Something your team would be proud to see realized." Maya looked at him with new appreciation. "Why are you here, Reynolds, really?" He smiled. "Slightly. I'm here because I signed that petition first. Because I want to learn from you. Because after seeing what you did during that crisis, I understand that. I've been arrogant in all the wrong ways and not nearly ambitious enough in the ways that actually matter." He gestured toward the hospital. "There are 500 people alive in this city today who would have died without you. But there could be thousands more in the next crisis, and the one after that, if you build what you just described." Maya studied him thoughtfully. "You really believe that?" "I believe that backup was never your real identity," Reynolds replied. "It was just a place you were hiding while you healed. But Crisis Alpha is who you really are. And the world needs that person now more than ever." As they walked back toward the administration building together, Maya felt a subtle but profound shift within herself. For 4 years, she had defined her life by what she had lost. Perhaps it was time to define it by what she could still create. Dr. Montgomery was waiting in Santos's office, along with Harper and a video conference connection to WHO headquarters in Geneva. They looked up expectantly as Maya entered. "I have conditions," she said without preamble. Montgomery smiled. "I expected nothing less. Let's hear them." "First, Crisis Response International will operate with complete medical autonomy," Maya began. "Political considerations will never override best medical practices." "Agreed," Montgomery nodded. "Second, every team member receives full psychological support services. No one carries the burden alone." "Essential," Harper concurred. "Third, we establish a memorial foundation in honor of the original Crisis Alpha team. Their families receive lifetime benefits, and their names are attached to the protocols they helped develop." Montgomery's expression softened. "They deserve nothing less." "Finally," Maya concluded, "the first regional training center will be established here at Westlake Memorial. I'll divide my time between global coordination and hands-on emergency medicine. I won't become an administrator who forgets what it's like on the front lines." Santos smiled broadly. "I think we can accommodate that arrangement." "Then I accept," Maya said simply. The room erupted in subdued but genuine celebration. Plans were outlined, timelines established, resources allocated. Within an hour, the framework for Crisis Response International had taken tangible form, with Maya at its center. As the meeting concluded, Montgomery pulled Maya aside. "There's one more thing. The WHO Executive Committee has authorized a formal recognition ceremony for you in Geneva next month. They want to present you with the Global Health Leadership Medal." Maya shook her head immediately. "No ceremonies, no medals. That's not why I'm doing this." "I know it's not," Montgomery agreed. "But symbols matter, Maya. The world needs heroes in medicine just as much as in any other field. Your story, from tragedy to redemption, from hiding to leading, can inspire a generation of healthcare providers. My team deserves the recognition more than I do," Maya insisted. "Then accept it in their honor," Montgomery suggested. "Use the platform to ensure they're remembered not just for how they died, but for how they lived and what they created." Maya considered this perspective. "I'll think about it." 6 weeks later, the transformation of Westlake Memorial was well underway. The East Wing had been redesigned as the Crisis Response International Training Center, with simulation labs, lecture theaters, and specialized equipment storage. Maya stood in the newly completed command center, watching as technicians installed communication systems that would connect Westlake to disaster zones worldwide. The room was designed to her specifications, incorporating lessons from 17 previous deployments and the recent chemical plant response. It's impressive, Dr. Reynolds commented, joining her. Hard to believe this was the old radiology storage area 6 weeks ago. The physical infrastructure is the easy part, Maya replied. Building the human infrastructure is the real challenge. Reynolds nodded toward the training room, visible through a glass wall, where 20 doctors from across the country were attending the first crisis response certification course. Looks like you're off to a good start. We had over 300 applications for those 20 spots. We'll need thousands more, Maya said. This is just the beginning. As they toured the facility, Maya's phone chimed with a notification. She checked it quickly and smiled. Good news? Reynolds asked. The best kind, Maya replied. The WHO Executive Committee just approved funding for the Rivera Patel Wilson Zhang Memorial Foundation. Full scholarships for medical students committed to disaster medicine, with special emphasis on applicants from underserved regions. Reynolds smiled. They would be proud. I hope so, Maya said softly. They continued to the memorial wall that had been installed in the center's main lobby. 5 photographs hung in a row, the 4 lost members of Crisis Alpha, and beside them, a group photograph of the original team. Beneath each image was a plaque detailing their contributions to disaster medicine and the lives they had saved. Dr. Chen, a young resident, approached hesitantly. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's something I think you should see. She led Maya and Reynolds to the hospital's main entrance, where a small crowd had gathered. Outside, a family was being interviewed by a local news crew, a mother, father, and 3 children that Maya recognized immediately. It's the family from the chemical disaster, Reynolds explained. The ones you saved during this second wave of casualties. They've been trying to find you to say thank you. Maya watched through the glass doors as the mother spoke passionately to the reporter, gesturing toward the hospital. Called her backup, but she was really a guardian angel. She saved my entire family when everyone thought we were too far gone. She kept her promise to my daughter. The camera panned to the little girl, who held up a hand-drawn picture of a doctor in a hazmat suit with a cape added to the back. She's a superhero, the child declared. But she doesn't wear a cape, she wears a doctor coat. Maya felt a lump form in her throat. Reynolds noticed and smiled gently. Not comfortable in the spotlight yet? I never will be, she admitted. But maybe that's not the point. She stepped outside to greet the family, who immediately surrounded her with tearful thanks and fierce hugs. The reporter turned the camera toward her, asking for a statement about the disaster response and her role in it. Maya hesitated, then spoke with quiet conviction. What happened that day wasn't about one person. It was about hundreds of healthcare workers choosing courage over fear, choosing to run toward disaster rather than away from it. That's what Crisis Response International will continue to do, bring hope and healing to the darkest moments of human experience. Later that evening, Maya returned to the memorial garden. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the quiet space. She sat on a bench, the day's events settling in her mind like sediment after a storm. Director Santos found her there, contemplative in the fading light. Penny for your thoughts? Maya smiled slightly. I was thinking about names. Names? For 4 years they called me Backup, Maya explained. Before that I was Crisis Alpha, but neither of those is really who I am. Santos sat beside her. And who are you, Dr. Chun? Maya considered the question thoughtfully. I'm someone who failed and survived and learned and grew. I'm someone who carries the legacy of 4 extraordinary people who believed that medical disasters don't have to be death sentences. I'm someone who finally understands that hiding your light doesn't honor those you've lost. That's quite an identity, Santos observed with a smile. It's taken me a long time to claim it, Maya acknowledged. But I'm ready now. As darkness fell over the garden, the hospital lights came on, illuminating the path back to the main building. In the emergency department, doctors and nurses were treating patients, saving lives, offering comfort. In the training center, future crisis responders were learning protocols that would one day save thousands. And in offices around the world, the infrastructure of Crisis Response International was taking shape. The woman they had once called Backup walked back toward the light, carrying with her the memories of those she had lost and the promise of those she would yet save. She wasn't running anymore, not from her past, not from her capabilities, not from her responsibility to share her gifts with the world. Dr. Maya Chen, former director of Crisis Response Unit Alpha and founding director of Crisis Response International, had finally come home to herself. And somewhere, she liked to think, 4 young doctors in field uniforms were smiling their approval. The legend of Crisis Alpha was entering a new chapter. And this time, it wouldn't end in tragedy. This time, it would become a global movement that transformed disaster medicine forever. This time, the story wouldn't be about what was lost, but about what was found, a purpose greater than grief, a mission worthy of sacrifice, and a leader who had finally stepped out of the shadows to claim her rightful place in the light. Some names are given, others are earned. The name Backup had once been a dismissal, but had become a testament to a woman who was always ready when needed most. Now it would become a legend, the story of how a doctor who hid from her own greatness finally embraced it, and in doing so, changed the world. 500 lives in 12 hours was just the beginning. The real miracle was what would come. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.